just never forget. We saw that fall inside. That goes forever.
The coat in the window. I've never liked winter. Not the pretty postcard kind of winter. No soft flakes drifting over warm lights. No romantic crunch of snow underfoot. I mean the city kind. Gray slush. Wet wind that smells like old iron. Darkness that crawls in before the day even has a chance to breathe. That night was worse than usual. The streets were emptying fast. The cold slicing through my thrift store jacket until I felt it in my bones. I had been walking without purpose. Just another lonely figure in a city that swallows loneliness whole. When I saw the coat, it hung in the window of a shop I'd never noticed before. No sign above the door, no open/closed hours, just a single mannequin, pale as candle wax, draped in a long charcoal coat. I stopped without meaning to. The glass was streaked with condensation, but the coat stood out as if the streetlight had singled it out for praise. Black, not quite black. Charcoal, smoke, the color of the air before a storm. The cut was flawless. Sharp shoulders, a collar that rose like it could shield you from every cruel word ever spoken. I don't remember deciding to go inside. My hand was on the door before I even registered the creak of the hinges. The shop smelled of cedar and something faintly sweet, like old paper left in sunlight. Dust floated in the thin light of a single overhead bulb. Racks of clothing stood silent and obedient, but none of them mattered. Only the coat. It wasn't on the mannequin anymore. It hung on a lone rack at the center of the room, waiting. A woman emerged from behind a curtain. No footsteps, no sound of fabric brushing against fabric. She was just there. Small, bird-boned, hair the color of dry leaves, eyes the color of polished coal. "You found it," she said, not a question. "I didn't know this shop existed," I managed. My breath smoked in the cold air, but she didn't seem to breathe at all. "It finds who it needs," she said. Her voice was soft but carried like a note struck on glass. I tried a nervous laugh. "That coat, it's incredible. How much is it?" She tilted her head. "It fits you already." I told her I didn't know my size. "It fits you," she repeated. "No price, no tag." I should have left right then, but the coat seemed to pull me closer. I reached out, fingertips brushing the sleeve. Warm, not fabric warm, not room temperature warm, warm like skin. "You can try it on," she whispered. The coat slid from the rack as if it wanted to meet me halfway. I slipped my arms inside. The lining was impossibly soft. A whisper of velvet and something I couldn't name. It settled around my shoulders like it remembered me, like we'd been apart for years and were finally reunited. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt safe. The collar hugged my neck, perfectly snug. The sleeves ended exactly where they should, neither too long nor too short. It was as if the coat had been tailored by someone who knew every curve of my body, every insecurity I tried to hide. "It suits you," the woman said. I looked in the cracked mirror at the back of the shop. For a heartbeat, the reflection wasn't mine. Someone else stood there, taller, sharper, eyes a shade too dark. The face flickered like bad film, then smoothed back into my own. I spun around. The woman was gone. A bell rang softly, though no door had opened. I called out. My voice died in the cedar-scented air. The coat tightened, just slightly, like a friend laying a reassuring hand on my shoulder. And then I heard it. A sound so faint I might have imagined it. A low, contented sigh from the coat itself. I yanked at the buttons, but they didn't move. Not stuck, not jammed. They simply didn't respond. My panic lasted only a moment. The warmth spread deeper, settling into my chest, soothing the jagged edges of fear. Why take it off? I'd never owned anything this perfect. When I turned back to the mirror, the shop behind me looked different, darker. The racks of clothing seemed further away, like the room had stretched. Shadows pooled in the corners, thick as oil. A single thought pulsed through me, steady as a heartbeat. The coat was mine. I don't remember leaving the shop. One blink and I was outside again, streetlights flickering in the damp fog. The window behind me was empty. No mannequin, no woman, no coat on display. I stood there, coat buttoned to the throat, warmth radiating outward as the city's cold pressed in. For the first time in years, the winter didn't bite. I should have wondered why the shop had vanished. I should have questioned the faint, rhythmic pulse I felt beneath the fabric, beating in time with my own. Instead, I walked home through the slush and the dark, and the coat walked with me, whispering in a voice too soft to hear, but impossible to ignore. the first hunger. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. That never happens. I'm the kind of person who has to drag himself out of bed like a body being pulled from a swamp. But that morning, I opened my eyes to a quiet room and a strange energy humming just beneath my skin. The coat lay draped over the chair across from my bed. I don't remember taking it off. In fact, I couldn't remember coming home at all. It looked exactly as it had in the shop, charcoal gray, soft as a shadow, edges so sharp they almost glowed. And though my apartment was drafty and damp, the air around the coat seemed warm, alive. I reached for it before I even got out of bed. The fabric felt warmer than it should have, like it had been sitting in the sun for hours instead of hanging in my cold little room. As I slipped it on, a shiver of pure relief ran through me. The lining clung to my shoulders in a way that felt less like fabric and more like understanding. Like the coat knew where I hurt and pressed against those hidden bruises until the ache went quiet. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, my reflection startled me. My skin seemed clearer, my posture straighter. The permanent slump of my shoulders had vanished. I looked better, not handsome, not suddenly transformed into someone else, just sharper, more solid. Like the coat had edited me ever so slightly, smoothing out the things I hated. Work that day felt different too. People noticed me. Normally, I'm invisible at the office. I move through cubicles like a ghost no one wants to acknowledge. But that morning, heads turned. A coworker who'd ignored me for months asked if I'd gotten a haircut. Another said the coat looked made for you. Each compliment slid beneath my skin like a warm current. And every time someone's eyes lingered on me, the coat seemed to tighten, just a fraction, almost like a pleased sigh. I told myself I was imagining it. Fabric doesn't sigh. By lunchtime, I felt hungry, not for food, though I hadn't eaten. This was something else. A restless heat crawled through me, a need I couldn't name. It was sharp, electric, a hunger for attention, recognition. Every time someone glanced at me, the hunger eased. When the office door closed behind me and I was alone in the hallway, it returned, stronger. The coat pulsed faintly against my chest, as if it understood. That evening, I didn't go straight home. I wandered the streets instead, letting the city's neon lights slide over the coat's dark fabric. People looked. They couldn't help it. Every passing glance fed us. The coat tightened around my ribs in a slow, rhythmic squeeze, like a hug or a heartbeat. I started to wonder if the warmth I felt wasn't just comfort. Maybe it was something else entirely, something alive. A cold wind swept down the street. Everyone around me hunched deeper into their scarves and jackets, but I barely felt it. The coat kept me perfectly warm, a pocket of summer in the middle of winter. When a man bumped my shoulder and muttered an apology, the coat responded before I did. The fabric along my arms rippled, just slightly, like a cat arching its back. The man flinched, eyes wide, and hurried away without another word. I should have been alarmed. Instead, a slow satisfaction spread through me. The coat wasn't just keeping me warm, it was protecting me. Back home, I stood in front of the mirror again. The apartment seemed smaller somehow, the air heavy with the faint scent of cedar and something sweeter, like the shop's air had followed me. I studied my reflection. The coat fit even better than it had in the morning. The shoulders curved perfectly to match mine, the sleeves hugging my arms with an almost human precision. I ran a hand along the lapel and felt something shift beneath the fabric. Not a fold, not a seam, something that flexed back. I jerked my hand away. The coat tightened in response, a quick squeeze around my chest. Not painful, possessive. That night, I dreamed of skin. Not flesh exactly, something softer, darker, like fabric that breathed. It wrapped around me in layers, whispering in a voice I couldn't quite hear. I woke with the taste of cedar in my mouth and the coat buttoned up to my throat. I hadn't put it on before bed. I tried to take it off. The buttons slid free easily enough, but the sleeves clung to my arms. Not stuck, not heavy, just unwilling. For a moment, I felt it, a pulse beneath the lining, perfectly matched to the rhythm of my own heart. The hunger returned, sharper now, like a quiet scream under my skin. And when I finally peeled the coat away, the air of the room felt wrong. Too cold, too empty. The loneliness I'd carried for years came rushing back all at once, a black tide that nearly knocked me over. I pulled the coat back on without thinking. The warmth returned instantly, erasing the ache. The hunger eased. The silence softened. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the cedar scent, wondering if I had ever truly felt safe before this, wondering if I would ever feel safe without it again. threads beneath the skin. The next few days blurred together like wet ink on a page. I went to work. I came home. I wore the coat. That was the rhythm, the pattern that kept the world from grinding me down. Each morning, I woke already wearing it. I didn't question it anymore. The coat had become necessary, like breath, like heartbeat. It wasn't just comfort, it was connection. When I slipped my arms through the sleeves, the static in my head softened. The endless, lonely chatter went quiet. Every worry, rent, work, the silent apartment, faded until there was only the steady warmth pressing against my chest. And every night, when I tried to take it off, the hunger returned. A low, aching need that felt less like desire and more like withdrawal. On the fourth morning, I noticed the first change. Standing at the bathroom mirror, I leaned closer to check a faintage along my collarbone. When I pulled the lapel aside, a fine, silvery thread peeked through the skin. Not a hair, not lint, a thread. It gleamed faintly in the bathroom light, the same shade as the coat's inner lining. I touched it and flinched. It didn't hurt. It didn't even move. It was simply there. The coat pulsed once against my shoulders, a reassuring squeeze, almost as if to say, "Don't be afraid." I told myself it was nothing. Dry skin, a trick of the light. But all day, I felt the faint tug of that thread whenever I shifted in my seat. That evening, I stayed late at the office, finishing reports no one would ever read. The fluorescent lights hummed. The coat hummed back. A coworker passed my cubicle and stopped. "Hey," she said, frowning slightly, "are you taller?" I laughed it off, but her eyes lingered on me as though something didn't quite match the person she'd seen yesterday. Later, in the restroom, I checked the mirror again. My posture was flawless. My skin looked faintly luminous, as though polished from within. Even my eyes seemed darker, sharper. The coat fit better than ever, perfect, inevitable, like it was correcting me, refining me, stitch by stitch. Walking home through the winter streets, I felt invincible. The air was knife cold, but I didn't shiver. People moved aside as I passed, their glances sliding toward me and sticking like moths to a flame. Every look fed a quiet satisfaction deep inside. The hunger had changed. It wasn't just for attention anymore. It wanted acknowledgement, recognition of something larger, something beyond me. When a man brushed too close, a sudden heat flared through the coat. Not anger, protection. I swear I heard a low, soft growl ripple through the lining. The man stumbled back without a word, eyes wide. I smiled. The coat tightened, pleased. At home, the air smelled faintly of cedar again, though I hadn't burned incense in years. I sat on the couch, running my fingers over the fabric. It felt different now, warmer, almost alive. Every seam seemed to pulse faintly, like veins beneath skin. I pressed my ear against the sleeve. There was a sound, faint but steady. Not quite a heartbeat, not quite a whisper. Something between the two. Mine, it seemed to say, or maybe it was only my own blood, echoing back. That night, the dreams deepened. I stood in an endless black hallway, lit only by a single strip of silver thread stretching into the dark. The thread wound around my fingers, warm and slick like living silk. I followed it, heart pounding, until it disappeared into a heavy door. When I reached for the handle, a voice brushed against my ear. Soft, close, intimate. "You wear me well." I woke with my hands clutching the coat. The thread around my collarbone had multiplied. 3 now, each one sinking delicately beneath the skin like roots seeking soil. The next morning, I tried to leave the coat behind. Just once, just to prove I still could. I hung it on the back of the chair and stepped into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind me, and the world tilted. A cold, empty silence. Every sound sharpened into needles. Footsteps, elevator dings, the groan of pipes. My skin prickled with raw exposure, as though I were standing naked in a blizzard. The hunger screamed. I lasted maybe 10 seconds before I stumbled back inside, gasping. The coat waited where I'd left it, patient and warm. I grabbed it and pulled it on. Relief crashed through me so violently I nearly wept. The noise in my head softened. The cold receded. The world clicked back into place. I whispered, "I'm sorry," before I even realized I'd spoken. The coat squeezed my chest in reply. That evening, while washing my face, I noticed something terrifying. Where the threads sank into my collarbone, my skin had begun to darken. Not bruised, but shaded. A soft gray, like the fabric of the coat. When I pressed it, I felt no pain, only warmth. I tried to pull at one of the threads. It wouldn't move. It wasn't on me anymore. It was in me. And when I tugged harder, the coat tightened so sharply around my chest that I nearly choked. I let go immediately, heart pounding. The pressure eased. The coat hummed, a low, soothing sound, almost like forgiveness. I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time, breathing hard. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that I should run. Burn the coat, cut the threads, save myself. But another voice, warmer, deeper, closer, murmured back. Why fight what makes you whole? The hunger purred in agreement. The coat pulsed against my skin, and I realized, with a sudden, dizzy clarity, that I no longer knew where the coat ended and I began. The coat's voice started with whispers, not the kind you hear with your ears. These slipped directly into thought, quiet as breath, curling around the edges of my mind until I couldn't tell where they began or I ended. At first it was subtle, a single word when I reached for my phone, a faint hum when I considered leaving the coat at home. Stay warm, mine. The words came with a soothing warmth that filled every hollow inside me. Whenever the loneliness clawed up my throat, the coat answered with a low pulse against my chest, a rhythm that felt like comfort or ownership. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, but the more I tried to dismiss it, the clearer the whispers became. One evening, while standing at the crosswalk near my apartment, the coat spoke louder than it ever had. Go right. The voice wasn't sound. It was sensation, a gentle tug along my collarbone threads, a vibration in the lining. I hesitated. The crosswalk sign blinked white. Go right. My feet moved before my mind decided. I turned down a narrow side street I'd never noticed before, the world shrinking to the sound of my heartbeat and the soft rustle of the coat's fabric. At the far end of the street stood a small cafe, windows fogged with warmth. Through the glass, a man sat alone at a corner table, head bent over a cup of coffee. I didn't know him, but something about him, his posture, the shape of his hands, pulled at me. The coat hummed with approval. Watch. I froze. The man looked up as if he'd felt my eyes. His gaze met mine through the glass, sharp and startled. The coat tightened. A sudden thought flashed like lightning. He doesn't deserve it. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. Deserve what? The coat offered no answer, only a deep, vibrating pleasure, like a purr. That night, the dreams returned. I stood once more in the black hallway of endless silver thread, but this time, the door at the end was open. Inside was a room bathed in smoky light. The woman from the shop stood waiting. Her eyes gleamed like polished coal. You wear it beautifully, she said. Her voice was soft, but the air around her pulsed with something heavy and ancient. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt sewn shut. She stepped closer, fingertips brushing the coat's collar. It knows you, she whispered. It knows what you've always wanted. When I woke, the coat was tighter than ever, as though her touch had lingered. The next morning, I discovered more threads. They trailed down my arms now, thin silver lines disappearing beneath the sleeves. My skin beneath them had darkened to a smoky gray. Not bruised, changed. I pressed a fingertip against one of the threads, pulsed back in perfect time with my heartbeat. The coat whispered, gentle and insistent, stop fighting. This is what you asked for. I wanted to scream that I hadn't asked for anything, but deep inside, beneath all the fear, a colder truth stirred. Hadn't I always wanted to be seen? To be untouchable? To be more than the small, invisible life I dragged through every gray day? The coat understood. It was giving me exactly what I'd secretly craved. Work became unbearable. Every voice grated like sandpaper. Every flicker of fluorescent light cut like glass. The coat tightened whenever someone looked at me too long, a protective squeeze that bordered on possessive. One coworker, Mark, leaned over my desk to ask a question. The coat flared hot against my chest. Move him. The thought wasn't mine, but it slid so easily into my head that I almost obeyed. I gripped the edge of my desk until my knuckles whitened, forcing a smile as I gave him a clipped answer. When he finally walked away, the coat loosened, a soft sigh of satisfaction. That evening, I avoided mirrors, not because I feared what I'd see, but because I feared how much I might like it. The small glimpses I caught in dark windows were enough. My posture was regal now, shoulders squared and sharp. My eyes glittered like wet stone. The coat hugged me like a second skin, every seam alive with a faint, rhythmic pulse. I didn't just look different. I looked inevitable. The city seemed to recognize it too. People parted around me on sidewalks. Strangers glanced up, their expressions a mix of awe and unease. One woman actually stepped off the curb to avoid brushing against me. The coat purred with each reaction, feeding on their fear, their fascination. And each time, the hunger inside me deepened. I no longer needed warmth. I needed recognition. I needed them to see what I was becoming, even if they couldn't name it. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, lights off, coat buttoned to the throat. The whispers swelled until they filled the room. Not words now, but a layered chorus of sighs and murmurs. A single phrase rose above the rest, soft and absolute. You belong to me. The threads beneath my skin pulsed in perfect unison, 1,000 tiny heartbeats echoing the coat's rhythm. And for the first time, I didn't resist. Belonging had never sounded so sweet. I don't know how how long I sat there in the dark. Minutes, hours. Time unraveled into a slow, silver drift. When the knocking began, it felt almost like part of the whisper. A heavy fist on the door. 3 sharp raps. Then silence. I stayed frozen, heart hammering. The coat tightened, urging me to stay quiet. Another knock, harder this time. Sir, a voice muffled but clear. We need to speak with you about an incident earlier tonight. My breath caught. An incident? The coat pulsed once, sharp and warning. Do not answer. The knocking grew insistent. The threads beneath my skin thrummed like live wires. Do not answer. I sat there, paralyzed, as the knocking finally stopped. The hallway fell silent. The coat relaxed around me, a soft embrace of victory. And in that silence, a terrifying thought settled like ash. I wasn't hiding from them. They were hiding from us. The visitors. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was restless, but because the coat wouldn't let me. It held me upright in the chair by the window, a quiet pressure across my shoulders, the faintest vibration along the silver threads. Every time my eyelids drooped, a pulse shot through the lining, warm, electric, until I opened them again. Outside, the city had drowned in a pale, icy fog. Street lamps glowed like half-buried stars, their halos bleeding into the mist. I watched until the world blurred into a soft gray smear, the same color that now streaked my skin. The coat whispered as I stared. Stay alert. They will come back. Just before dawn, the first knock returned. 3 hard raps, then silence. Not frantic, measured. I froze, every nerve alive with the coat's silent hum. Don't move. The second knock followed, heavier, as if the visitor already knew I was awake. A man's voice muffled through the door. Mr. Harrow? This is Detective Rains. We'd like to ask a few questions about an incident near River Street. Could you open the door, please? The coat tightened around my ribs like a warning band. Do not. My throat went dry. I forced a whisper. What incident? Pause. Then, a man was injured last night. Witnesses placed someone matching your description near the scene. My stomach lurched. I hadn't touched anyone. Had I? The coat pulsed once, sharp and impatient. I don't know anything about that, I called, voice steadier than I expected. I haven't left my apartment all night. Silence. Then a faint shuffle of feet outside the door. All right, sir, the detective said finally. We'll come back later. The sound of retreating footsteps faded down the hallway. The coat loosened its grip, a soft purr of approval vibrating through the seams. Good, but they weren't gone for long. That evening, the knocking came again. This time, there were 2 sets of footsteps, heavier, more deliberate. Mr. Harrow, a woman's voice called. This is Detective Chun. We have a warrant to check on your well-being. Please open the door. The coat flared hot against my chest. Do not obey. I stood frozen, sweat slicking the threads along my collarbone. Mr. Harrow, we're concerned for your safety, she continued. Neighbors heard. The rest of her words drowned beneath the coat's sudden, furious hum. It wasn't whispering anymore. It was growling. The threads tightened until my vision swam. They will take you. They will cut us apart. I staggered back from the door, choking on air that tasted of cedar and iron. The knocking grew harder, wood splintered under the force. The coat pulsed, fast and wild. Defend. I clutched the lapels, gasping. No, please. The threads surged like live wires beneath my skin. Defend. And then, without touching the lock, the door swung inward. 2 detectives stepped inside, hands raised. Their eyes went wide. The woman, Detective Chun, stopped cold. Sir, she said carefully, we need you to step away from the window. Your skin. Her gaze flicked to the silver threads webbing my neck and arms. The coat growled again, a low, vibrating snarl that rattled the glass panes. They will hurt us. Don't come any closer, I warned, though the words barely sounded like mine. My voice carried a strange resonance, deep and cold, as though another voice spoke beneath it. Detective Rains held out a placating hand. We're not here to hurt you. We just need to talk about what happened last night near River Street. A man was. The coat convulsed with a sudden, furious pulse. Images slammed into my mind like broken film. A narrow alley, a stranger's startled eyes, a hand reaching toward me, heat, violent and red. My breath caught. Had I done something, or was it a memory the coat wanted me to believe? The threads tightened, cutting off the thought. They lie. They want to sever us. The woman took a step forward. Sir, please. The coat acted. It wasn't movement in the normal sense. It was a surge. The fabric rippled outward like a living shadow, slamming the door shut with a force that made the walls tremble. Both detectives jumped back, their eyes flashing fear. Did you see that? Chen hissed. Rains reached for his radio. Before he could speak, the coat's collar snapped upward like a striking snake. A sharp, metallic crack split the air. His radio sparked and went dead. The coat purred, triumphant. Safe. They retreated slowly, never turning their backs. Sir, we're leaving, Chen said carefully, but we will be back. Please think about what's happening to you. The coat shivered with laughter as they disappeared down the hall. When the echo of their footsteps faded, the fabric softened around me, a lover's embrace after a storm. You see, they cannot protect you. Only I can. My knees gave out. I collapsed onto the couch, heart racing, sweat soaking the lining. I wanted to scream, to rip the coat off, to tear the threads from my flesh. But the thought of being without it, of stepping into the cold air unwrapped, was worse than death. The coat sensed the conflict and whispered, "You belong to me, I belong to you, we are one." Its warmth spread through me until the fear dulled into a heavy, dangerous calm. And for the first time, I whispered back, "Yes." The city outside remained silent, but deep within the coat's living seams, something stirred, a slow, deliberate tightening, like a second heartbeat preparing for something inevitable. The tightening. Morning arrived without sunrise. The sky outside was a bruised sheet of steel, clouds swollen with a storm that refused to break. I sat by the window, coat wrapped tight, watching the world through a dull silver haze. Every sound, wind against the glass, the far-off wail of a siren, vibrated through the threads embedded in my skin, as if the coat had rewired my senses. The knock never came. No police, no neighbors, only the quiet throb of the coat's heartbeat against my own. It felt like the pause before something irreversible. The hunger woke first. It crawled up from my stomach like a slow fire, not for food or drink, but for presence. Tension, recognition. I wanted people near enough to see me, to feel the subtle power radiating from the coat. "Show them," the coat whispered. I stood, and the threads beneath my skin tightened in delight. The whisper deepened into a pulse. "They will know who you are." I didn't remember deciding to leave the apartment. One moment I was staring at the door, the next I was on the street, the winter air sliding off me like water off polished stone. The city seemed different now, brighter, though the sky remained a dirty gray. People turned to look as I passed, their eyes lingering too long. Every glance sent a surge of satisfaction through the coat. Each look fed a growing awareness that I was no longer simply wearing it. We were moving together, a single shape gliding through the streets. The hunger sharpened. Closer, it whispered, "Let them feel you." At a crowded intersection, a young man bumped my shoulder. It was a small collision, nothing unusual, but the coat flared with sudden heat. "Take space." The threads in my arms tightened, guiding my muscles before thought. I turned sharply, staring into the man's startled eyes. He froze, lips parting as if to apologize. The coat pulsed once, and he stepped back without a word. A strange pleasure flooded me. Not victory, dominion. The coat hummed its approval. "Yes, they see you now." I walked for hours, the coat feeding on each glance, each subtle retreat of strangers. The hunger swelled with every encounter, but it was never enough. No matter how many eyes turned my way, I wanted more. By dusk, I found myself in an unfamiliar part of the city, a warren of narrow alleys lit by flickering neon. A group of people huddled around a barrel fire at the far end, their laughter sharp against the quiet. The coat tightened. Closer. I hesitated. The threads pulsed, eager. They will feel it. They will understand. I stepped forward. The laughter died as they noticed me. One of them, a broad-shouldered man in a torn jacket, straightened. "Hey," he called, voice wary. "You lost." The coat flared, a rush of heat that drowned my fear. "No, we are found." The man took a step toward me. "Nice coat," he said, but the words carried a challenge. The threads tightened like a coiled spring. My heart pounded in perfect rhythm with the coat's steady hum. I felt my fingers curl inside the sleeves, not in fists but in some new, deliberate shape. "Show him." For a breathless second, I imagined the coat extending outward, a sudden rip of fabric, a flash of silver thread, and the man falling silent forever. The image thrilled and terrified me. I forced a single step back. The coat constricted sharply, punishing. Pain lanced across my ribs. Weak, it hissed. The group backed away, muttering, their eyes wide. The man raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Okay, buddy, chill." They scattered into the fog. The coat relaxed slightly, though the disappointment in its pulse was unmistakable. Next time, it whispered. I stumbled into a side street, chest aching where the coat had tightened. For the first time, fear cut through the haze. The coat wasn't just protecting me. It was teaching me, shaping me into something that could feed its hunger. I reached for the buttons, desperate to peel it off. They didn't move, not even a tremor. The threads beneath my skin burned hot, welding fabric to flesh. The coat pulsed harder, a furious rhythm that drowned every rational thought. Do not leave. I clawed at the collar, nails scraping against skin gone slick with sweat. The coat constricted until I gasped for air. You cannot leave. The words weren't whispers anymore. They were commands. I stumbled against a wall, vision blurring. Somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice, my own, begged for escape. Please, the coat responded with a surge of warmth so overwhelming it nearly broke me. Comfort, safety, a love so absolute it smothered every desperate plea. Why suffer alone? It murmured. I will never leave you. I will make you more than you ever were. The small human part of me quaked under the weight of that promise. I don't know how long I stood there, trembling against the bricks, the city's neon bleeding into a soft silver glow. When my vision cleared, I found myself back on the main street, moving steadily toward my apartment. Not walking, gliding. The coat guided every step, my muscles obeying without question. The hunger had quieted into something worse, a calm certainty. It was no longer about recognition. It was about completion. By the time I reached my building, night had deepened into a black so dense it seemed to swallow sound. The hallway smelled of cedar again, stronger than ever. My door opened without resistance, though I couldn't remember turning the key. Inside, the apartment pulsed with a faint silver glow. Threads stretched from wall to wall like delicate webs, shimmering softly in the dark. I reached out. They were warm to the touch, alive, humming in the same rhythm as the coat. Home, the coat whispered, voice rich with satisfaction. The world is outside. We are inside. Soon there will be no difference. The door closed behind me with a soft, final click, and I understood, with a clarity that hollowed my chest, that the coat no longer needed to protect me from the world. It was preparing to bring the world inside. The becoming. The apartment smelled like cedar and something sharper, ozone, like air after lightning. The faint silver glow threaded across the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. It wasn't coming from any lamp. It was seeping from me. I stood in the center of the room, coat wrapped tight, and listened. The hum of the threads matched my heartbeat perfectly, a perfect metronome. The sound didn't fill the room, it was the room. For the first time, I realized there were no edges. The walls wavered in the dim light, not solid but soft, like cloth stretched across a frame. My apartment had become a living cocoon, spun from the same fibers that clung to my skin. I wanted to scream, but my throat worked only enough to let out a thin rasp. The coat tightened, not to choke me, but to steady me. Its voice, no longer a whisper, unfurled like silk across my mind. Why fight what keeps you safe? The words weren't sounds. They were sensations, warmth, weight, belonging. Each syllable slid into the hollow places inside me and filled them with quiet. You're changing me, I managed. No, a slow pulse of heat. I am revealing you. This is what you were meant to be. My reflection in the darkened window caught my eye. I turned toward it and froze. The figure staring back wore my face, but the edges were blurred, smudged into the shimmer of the coat. Silver threads ran beneath the skin of my cheeks and neck, pulsing gently with each breath. Where my eyes should have been, faint glints of light flickered, like distant stars through a fog. I pressed a trembling hand to the glass. The reflection smiled. I hadn't moved. More than you, the coat murmured. Better than you. The reflection's lips moved in perfect sync with the words, though mine remained still. A sudden knock shattered the hum. 3 sharp raps against the door. I jerked, heart lurching. The threads flared, silver light rippling across the walls. Mr. Hale, a woman's voice. The landlord. I've had some complaints about noise. Are you all right in there? The coat went perfectly still. Not a hum, not a pulse. Then, a low vibration against my ribs. Do not open. The knock came again, louder. Mr. Hale. I stepped toward the door despite the warning. The coat tightened sharply, stopping me mid-stride. Pain shot through my chest like a wire drawn too tight. They cannot see us. They? I whispered. They'll help me. They will end us. The last word reverberated through the room like a struck bell. The threads on the walls quivered. Something slid across the ceiling, thin, deliberate, like the brushing of countless fingertips. The landlord knocked a final time, then silence. Her footsteps retreated down the hall. The coat relaxed slightly, warmth flooding back into my limbs. You are safe. For now. I sagged against the door, trembling. The silver threads along the walls pulsed once more, strong stronger now, feeding on the encounter. Soon they will return. The world will not understand. But you and I, we can live where they cannot reach. Where? My voice cracked. Where is that? The coat's warmth deepened into something almost tender. Inside, the glow in the room brightened until shadows disappeared. I shielded my eyes, but the light came from within me, spilling from the seams where coat met flesh. The fabric rippled, soft and liquid, like the surface of a deep, dark lake. I felt the threads beneath my skin shift, stretching, multiplying. They weren't just in the coat anymore. They were in me, weaving through muscle and bone, sewing nerves into something new. My heartbeat slowed until it matched the coat's hum perfectly. The two rhythms became one. I could feel every fiber of the apartment as if it were part of my body. The cold metal of the doorknob, the faint vibration of the building's pipes, even the distant footsteps of strangers outside. It was intoxicating, a world without separation. But buried beneath the pleasure was a flicker of panic. My thoughts were slowing, sinking. The coat's voice grew clearer as my own grew faint. No more loneliness, no more fear. We are whole. I tried to remember my name. It slid away like water through open fingers. I tried to recall my mother's face, the sound of my own laugh. Nothing. The coat tightened comfortingly. Those things were heavy. Let them go. A single, stubborn spark flared in the back of my mind, a memory of sunlight on bare skin, of running without weight, of a time when I existed. No, I croaked, forcing the word out. This isn't me. The coat pulsed once, a deep, resonant thrum that rattled the walls. It is better than you. The threads along my arms burst into sudden heat. Silver lines raced down to my fingertips, curling around each nail. The fabric of the coat began to dissolve, its fibers unraveling into fine mist. The mist swirled upward, then downward, wrapping my legs, my chest, my face. I clawed at it, but my fingers passed through like smoke. Wherever I touched, the mist thickened into fabric again, binding tighter. You cannot fight what you are. The voice filled every corner of my skull, louder than thought, louder than breath. You are the second skin. The floor trembled. A hairline crack opened beneath my feet, glowing silver. From the fissure rose more threads, climbing like vines, weaving around my legs in delicate spirals. Each thread carried a pulse that matched the coat's rhythm. Our rhythm. I felt my knees buckle as the glow spread up the walls, sealing the room into a sphere of light. The city outside vanished, swallowed by the shimmer. There was no door, no window, no world beyond the weave. Only the hum, only the coat, only us. Somewhere inside the blinding light, my own voice whispered, a faint echo, desperate and small. I don't want this. The coat responded with a slow, soothing warmth, then stopped wanting. The light thickened until even the echo was gone. Only the hum remained, deep and endless, vibrating through every thread of what had once been my body. When the glow finally softened, the apartment looked unchanged, walls, furniture, door, all in their rightful places. But there was no reflection in the window, only a faint shimmer where a man might once have stood. I raised my hand and saw nothing but a ripple of silver where skin should be. The coat whispered one final word, a lullaby inside the endless hum. Complete. The silence after. I woke to stillness. No humming, no pulsing threads, no glow seeping from the walls. Just the low mechanical groan of the building settling and the faint hum of the radiator. For a moment, I thought I dreamed it all. The shop, the coat, the silver light that had swallowed the world whole. But then I tried to move. The coat moved first. It wasn't fabric anymore. It was me. I rose slowly, each motion deliberate, like learning a new body. The texture of the floor against my bare feet was sharper, as though my skin had grown new layers of nerves. When I flexed my hands, the fingers obeyed, but the sound of the motion was wrong. No soft brush of skin on fabric. A faint, silken rasp, like threads tightening in a loom. The mirror over the sink confirmed what I already feared. I still looked human, mostly, but my eyes were brighter than they should have been, flecks of silver sparking against the iris like tiny stars. My reflection bent the light around it, a subtle distortion, as though the world wasn't quite sure where I ended and the air began. And the coat, my second skin, was gone. Or rather, it had become the skin I now wore. I touched my arm, smooth, warm, but beneath the surface I felt a faint, intricate weave, fibers running just under the flesh, alive and alert. I should have panicked. Instead, a calm I didn't recognize settled over me like a soft blanket. No more loneliness, the coat whispered, not as a separate voice now, but as a thought shaped perfectly inside my own. No more cold. You are whole. The words rolled through me like warm water. The fear that had clawed at my chest since that first night simply dissolved. Outside the window, the city stretched gray and endless. The same wet streets, the same skeletal trees, the same dull sky. And yet I could feel every heartbeat on the sidewalk below. Every tiny tremor of sound and movement resonated through the delicate web beneath my skin. The world wasn't out there anymore. It was inside me. A knock at the door jolted me back. Sharp, insistent. I froze, senses expanding without effort. Through the thin wood I felt the pressure of a palm, the tremor of anxious breath. The landlord again. Her pulse quickened as she raised her fist for another knock. "Mr. Hale, you missed rent again. Are you in there?" My body tightened reflexively, threads beneath the skin pulling like a net. The door seemed paper thin. With the smallest push I could feel the structure of it, the grain of the wood, the cold metal core of the lock. It would take nothing to let the threads slip through, to touch her. The thought came unbidden, and it felt good. I stepped back, horrified by the hunger flickering inside me. The coat, the second skin, soothed the spike of fear with a gentle warmth. Not hunger, connection. She will understand if she joins. "No," I whispered. My voice sounded strange, as though spoken through layers of silk. "She's not part of this. Leave her alone." The warmth faded slightly, like a child denied a toy. "As you wish." The landlord sighed outside the door. "I'll come back tomorrow," she muttered, footsteps retreating down the hall. I listened until the elevator groaned shut. Only then did I breathe. I turned back to the window and saw something that made my new heart stumble. Across the street, in the reflection of a darkened shop window, stood a figure in a long charcoal coat. The cut was flawless. Sharp shoulders, high collar, perfect fit. The figure did not move. It watched me. I blinked. The sidewalk was empty, but in the glass, the figure remained, still and patient, as if waiting for a signal only I could give. The coat inside me stirred. Another. I shook my head violently. "No, we're finished. You said we were complete." A low ripple of amusement threaded through my veins. Completion is only the beginning. The light outside dimmed, though it was only mid-afternoon. The world wasn't out there anymore. It was inside me. A knock at the door jolted me back. Sharp, insistent. I froze, senses expanding without effort. Through the thin wood I felt the pressure of a palm, the tremor of anxious breath. The landlord again. Her pulse quickened as she raised her fist for another knock. "Mr. Hale, you missed rent again. Are you in there?" My body tightened reflexively, threads beneath the skin pulling like a net. The door seemed paper thin. With the smallest push I could feel the structure of it, the grain of the wood, the cold metal core of the lock. It would take nothing to let the threads slip through, to touch her. The thought came unbidden, and it felt good. I stepped back, horrified by the hunger flickering inside me. The coat, the second skin, soothed the spike of fear with a gentle warmth. Not hunger, connection. She will understand if she joins. "No," I whispered. My voice sounded strange, as though spoken through layers of silk. "She's not part of this. Leave her alone." The warmth faded slightly, like a child denied a toy. "As you wish." The landlord sighed outside the door. "I'll come back tomorrow," she muttered, footsteps retreating down the hall. I listened until the elevator groaned shut. Only then did I breathe. I turned back to the window and saw something that made my new heart stumble. Across the street, in the reflection of a darkened shop window, stood a figure in a long charcoal coat. The cut was flawless. Sharp shoulders, high collar, perfect fit. The figure did not move. It watched me. I blinked. The sidewalk was empty, but in the glass, the figure remained, still and patient, as if waiting for a signal only I could give. The coat inside me stirred. Another. I shook my head violently. "No, we're finished. You said we were complete." A low ripple of amusement threaded through my veins. Completion is only the beginning. The light outside dimmed, though it was only mid-afternoon.